We are back. Another edition of the Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen. I am Kevin Bowen, Eddie Garrison. On the ones and twos as we inch closer to life at Grand Park. Eddie, I guess now that I think about it, this will be our last, I think, really off-season podcast.
Hallelujah.
Yes, amen to that. When you think to next week, Chris Ballard going to meet the media on Wednesday for report day. We'll probably pod maybe late that afternoon if it works out schedule-wise, and Thursday will be the first practice. And here we go. So very much looking forward to that. For today's pod, we'll stick to another one of these off-season lists, and I think you and I were kind of on the same page on this one. The Colts that have the most to prove. I think in one iteration I said kind of the Colts with the most pressure on them, I think is another way to look at it. And sure, individually everybody's got pressure in the NFL, but I like the most to prove label. And again, last week we did an indispensable. I think this one can be a little bit harder to define most to prove. You could talk about it injury-wise. You could talk about it financially. You could talk about it, in terms of how important they are to the team. It's just, indispensable to me is a little bit more cut and dry of like, are they good and does the position have depth or not? Like those are kind of the two factors that I think play into indispensable the most. Most to prove, most pressure, I think go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there. That's how you view it. And it'd be fascinating to see how others view it because I know some people, like myself, I did this exercise, I think, last week on Query and Company with James Boyd, who was filling in for Jake Query and Jimmy Cook. And the way I approached it was these guys, if they don't have a good season, they're being replaced. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why
that's fair.
That's how I viewed it. But I'll probably view it more in your light this go around just to see how it falls for me. Again,
different types, different amounts of pressure. However you want to look on that, I think all of that is at play here on this version of the podcast. So let's get into it, and let's kind of do what we did last week, Eddie, and count it down from 5 to 1. If I had to go for a number 5 on the most to prove list, for me, I'm going to go with a guy that I think the Colts sent a strong message to earlier this offseason, and that would be Kwity Paye. They gave him a bigger payday, not for this season, but for 2025, extending that rookie contract by a year, I guess picking up the team option to be the technical way to describe it. So, for Kwity, I think it's proving that he is at that level, proving that a second contract is on the horizon for him, proving that the draft pick of Latu maybe wasn't needed to the full extent that, some felt like it was. So, again, he probably falls in the category, if it's not as much health-related, it's a little bit more of, are you at that level contractually, and are you continuing to prove that you are a first-round type of talent? And that's kind of how I view Kwity Paye here this season. Again, not a contract year until next year, with them picking up that fifth-year team option. But I have him number 5 on my most to prove list.
He fell on my 5 when I did this list last week. He was a little bit higher for me, just because of the factor of, they pick up the 5th-year option. They drafted Latu, and Samson Ebukam is in year 2 of a 3-year contract. And, he produced last year as a pass rusher, and if Latu can prove to be a viable pass rusher and a consistent pass rusher along with being an above-average run defender, I think the days of Kwity Paye are numbered, personally.
Yeah, and you know what? There are some other guys, too, whether it be Tyquan Lewis, whether it be Dayo Adangbo. I know the staff is really high, even on an Isaiah Land. There's not a lot of, Nick Cross, for example, there's not a lot of options besides him. Kwity Paye, you do have some options, especially on the passing downs. And again, kind of different cups of tea of what you want from a power rusher versus more of a speed guy, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, Kwity Paye certainly belongs on this list. I understand why you would have him higher. I guess I just kind of let the cat out of the bag, and my next guy up on the list, number 4, it would be Nick Cross. And for him, Eddie, it's proving why you traded into round 3. And it's also proving why we sit here on July 16th and we haven't seen a veteran safety move.
Right.
It's proving the staff has made the right decision because Nick Cross is in a very interesting position in that I have major questions about safety heading into the year, but I am borderline very confident Nick Cross is going to be the starter. Like, I don't know where the serious competition necessarily comes from.
Right.
At that strong or at that free safety spot here as we open up camp next week. So, again, proving it probably falls more into your category of if you don't prove it, you're done. I mean, that's kind of where life is at with Cross. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy. You look at Nick Cross, Eddie. He started 4 games in his NFL career.
Yeah.
And the very same draft of him was Rodney Thomas II. And look at how many games Rodney Thomas has started in his career. I mean, over 20. So, again, it is paramount that Cross proves himself because you can play the age factor maybe for that first NFL season. You know, you thought it'd be a redshirt year. Well, you know, year 2 comes and goes, and they started a guy last year who played linebacker 2 weeks before he was playing safety, and Ronnie Harrison Jr. You don't see that in the NFL. So this is a vital season for Nick Cross.
Did he show you anything last season in his 2 starts that he made?
Not enough to give him as much of a leash as they are apparently giving him. No. I mean, do I see a flash or two? Certainly. But no. I mean, they have treated him this offseason like I would treat a Michael Pittman Jr. or whatever, an EJ Speed or a Julian Blackmon. You know, guys that I think have earned the right to, you know, again, be super reliable, super trustworthy. Bernard Ryman, you know, some of these guys on the roster that, you know, might be labeled as young-ish guys, but they deserve to be treated as veterans. To me, Nick Cross has not earned that yet, and we'll see if he does this season. It's an unbelievable opportunity that he's getting this year.
Number 3 on your list, so to recap, 5, Kwity Paye, 4, Nick Cross. Number 3, we've talked about him a lot simply because he didn't play at all last year because he was dealing with hamstring injuries. He had a roller coaster of a season, his rookie campaign 2 years ago. That would be tight end Jelani Woods.
Yeah, and this probably falls the first one into the true kind of injury category of like you've got to make an availability case here after missing an entire last season. But you know, also, doesn't he have to prove himself in the NFL? I mean, you brought up his rookie year, Eddie. If you go back and look at that rookie season, now there were definitely flashes late in the year. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
But Jelani Woods has 1 game in his career with more than 3 catches. 1 game in his career. Mm-hmm. That was the big Pittsburgh game on whatever that was, Sunday night, Monday Night Football. I mean, that's it. And
well, of course, he had the 2 touchdown game against Kansas City with one of them being the game winner too.
So it's just it's the quantity of those numbers. Again, 25 catches in his entire career. So you know, he falls into this injury category, sure, but also a little bit more into the like, wait, you got to prove yourself in the NFL on top of that. So for me, Jelani Woods is a very deserved candidate on this list. Okay, contractually, you know, it's year 3 of a 4-year rookie deal. It's not the end of the world by any means, but this is a double whammy from a, you know, you are still yet to be a lock in the NFL, and you're still, you know, from an injury standpoint, having to prove yourself on that end.
Yeah, 18 of his 25 catches his rookie campaign came in the final 6 games, 8 of those coming in that Monday Night Football game against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And I kind of forgot that almost, Eddie. I knew the Pittsburgh game was big, but I thought there was another like 6 for 55 game or something like that. But as you pointed out, there's not that. So sure, there's been the impressive touchdown catch. You know, you brought up the Kansas City game. Again, there's been a moment or two, but there's still a level of quantity at tight end that you have to achieve. And I'm not, you know, not everybody has to be Jack Doyle and be, you know, whatever, 7 catches and, you know, 7 yards per catch. But Jelani Woods, number 3 on this list.
All right, KB, we are in the top 2 in terms of players that have the most to prove. There you go. In your eyes, we've pretty much labeled 2 defensive players, 1 offensive player. The next 2 will be offensive, so you'll round out your top 5 with 3 offensive players. This one may be a little bit of a surprise in terms of players that people think along the offense that have something to prove. Right tackle Braden Smith.
Yeah, and again, the root of it falls in the health category, with him missing as much time as he did last season. And if you want to go back, Eddie, I think it was 2 of the last 3 years he's missed about a third of a season. So, I mean, that's a substantial amount when you think about it. So, again, this is proving that you are available. And, it should be noted, look at that cap number for 2025, the final year of his deal. It's a significant cap number. And the Colts have not operated too often in that boat of, bailing on guys late in their contracts. But I don't think it can be ignored if, again, the injury question shows up again.
$19 million.
And with Smith, too, Eddie, it's been kind of a multitude of injuries and, some tricky stuff. And, he did miss the entire spring. Unless I'm missing somebody, I believe he's the only Colt to miss the entire spring. Like, notable Colt, only starting Colt.
Alec Pierce?
Pierce participated definitely in some of those OTAs when we were out there, but not that final mini camp. So that's why I would put him on this list of just it's probably more just availability. I mean, I've always spoken, I think, very highly of Braden Smith and think he is a very reliable guy when healthy, but the when healthy part has started to become more of a storyline here over the last couple of seasons. So that's why I label him on this. Again, a little bit more injury, but also you can't ignore the finances coming up next season.
Yeah, that cap number that you talked about, $19 million for next season. And did you hit on the number of games he's missed each of the last 2 seasons, respectively?
Yeah, pretty much a third of each of the last couple of seasons. So yeah, I think it's like 6 and 7 games over the past couple of years. So again, just cannot totally sweep that under the rug and act like it's a nothing thing. And does that play into the Matt Gonzalez draft pick at all? I mean, I think that's probably a fair question to ask.
The top player on your list with the most to prove, not surprising, quarterback Anthony Richardson.
I'm glad you put out the position he plays. Quarterback Anthony Richardson. When you play that position, you're going to fall on this list for virtually every single team. But, I guess in a way, similar to Jelani Woods, there's an element of you're proving your health and you're proving that you can play, period, in the NFL. That is what I would kind of describe the prove it levels for Richardson. We're not at a contractual impasse here. We're not at, year 3 of the 4-year rookie contract or, the team option decision. It just happened for Kwity Paye. Well, Kwity Paye's 2 drafts prior to Anthony Richardson. So we're not there yet. But again, from an availability standpoint and really proving that he can play and succeed, flourish, however you want to describe it at this level, I think we're definitely here with Richardson. So again, I didn't have Richardson on my indispensable list because I do view Joe Flacco as a pretty quality backup. Mm-hmm. I think you could make the case if you're labeling like 1 and 2 quarterback duos in the league and who you feel the best about, who you feel there could be a little drop-off from starter to backup, and still think that you have something there. Not like, again, Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and with the Raiders. I think the Colts are pretty high up on that list. But when you're talking pressure, you're talking prove it, quarterbacks inevitably fall on this list, without question. But quarterbacks that just had the rookie seasons of Richardson, lack of availability, lack of playtime in general, you're going to be on this list. So, again, for me, 5-1. Kwity Paye, Nick Cross, Jelani Woods, Braden Smith, Anthony Richardson. Other names I thought about, Alec Pierce.
He was on my list.
Jonathan Taylor.
Was not on my list.
For Taylor, for me, this is the first full year under the contract. And, for the first time in his NFL life, really, you saw health show up. Remember, he missed, 3 games with that thumb injury in December as well. So, again, I think anytime you're a running back making this money and you don't really do a lot on third down, I think you should fall, at least, again, give it some thought. And then Juju Brents would be the other one. Still not uber pressing, but I think he's another one that I pondered a little bit.
I put him on my list simply because of the fact that it's a premium position now in today's NFL. You spent a 2nd-round pick on him. He, just like Richardson, struggled to stay on the field last year. He only played in 9 games. And you have to factor in he's a hometown product. So I feel like the fact that he's from Warren Central, that has a little bit more pressure on him to succeed, considering he's playing for the hometown franchise that he grew up as a fan watching.
So if you go Alec Pierce, Juju Brents on, who are you taking off my list?
Off of your list,
Kwity Paye, you said you would keep.
Yes.
Nick Cross, you would keep.
I did not have Cross on there simply because I value cornerback more than safety.
Okay, so you go with a little bit more positional value.
Yeah. And then, surprisingly enough, I didn't have Braden Smith on the list. just because I didn't think about it the way you did.
Yeah. And again, that's the fun part of kind of how you can interpret a most approved, most pressure related list.
And when we were talking about like players that, were on the outside looking in, I brought up Dio Adengbo last week on the show because, he's coming off a 10-sack season, right?
Yeah, very close to that. I think
It's somewhere around that. And he's in a contract year. They picked up the 5th-year option on Quiddy, so if he goes out and he proves that he can, mimic the success on the field that he had last season, because I felt like the final month and a half of the year, he was your third best defensive lineman.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's a good one. I probably should have pondered that one a little bit more. The thing about Dio is if you look at next year's free agent list, and I hope I'm not missing anybody, but the Kylan Gransons, the Ryan Kellys, the Julian Blackmans, the EJ Speeds, out of those guys, Dio probably can earn the most. If he signs a 3-year, I don't know, $12 million annually deal. I don't know what that would look like for him, but I mean he could be looking at a really nice payday here next season, and if he really breaks out, that $12 million annually could be much higher.
Oh yeah,
on that. It's one of those things. If the Colts presented Dio a contract extension right now, I'm not sure he would accept.
Maybe that's why he's in the final year of his contract.
It's a little bit Andrew Nemhart-ish with the Pacers right now, kind of in that boat there. So yes, I think that is that's a good one to mention. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, you did mention some of the other key free agents: Ryan Kelly, EJ Speed, Julian Blackman are probably the most notable with Dio Adengbo that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, and again, when you add up years and just total contract value, that's why I'd put Dio on that list. So always fun to do this exercise. Again, last week we did most indispensable. This week, most approve. And starting next week, we will have actual news items to react to here with Colts training camp beginning.
And more than just one pot a week soon as well.
Yeah, again, as we always kind of do during training camp, it's a little bit of a jumbled schedule of how frequently we do podcasts, but there seems to be a few more off days kind of sprinkled in there. But yeah, we'll certainly come at you probably a little bit more than the 1 week cadence we've been on here recently.
Are you ready for Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
We actually have a handful to get to. I believe the total is 6 today. We start out with Alec. Of these players, who is most likely to lead the team, or I should say, who is more likely to lead the team in snaps played this year, barring injuries? We'll start with wide receiver because he lists 5 different positions. Adonai Mitchell or Josh Downs?
So more snaps, that's what we're doing here. We're picking more snaps for these guys?
Correct.
Downs.
Any particular reason why you believe that?
He's the only slot you really trust. With Mitchell, there's obviously Pittman, and then, Pierce is at least somebody. So, yeah, I'd feel pretty confident. I mean, Alec Pierce would have to be flat out benched for that to look differently. So I'd feel fairly confident with Downs.
Staying on the offensive side of the football, tight end, Jelani Woods, Andrew Ogletree, or Will Mallory?
Gosh, well... That trio, I'd probably say Woods, but if you were throwing Allie Cox and Granson on the list and said pick, the guy that's going to play the most, tight end, I literally have no freaking idea. So out of that group, yeah, give me Woods, but boy, am I iffy on that.
Can I say Will Mallory?
Ooh, okay.
I think the flashes at the end of the season were big for him.
Yeah.
He was the fastest tight end of his class.
Mm-hmm. At the combine, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I just think there may be something there. And what's his season look like last year if he doesn't have the foot injury coming into rookie minicamp?
Right.
And
you forget how oft injured he was throughout his first NFL offseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a name that I'm like, don't forget about him. That's kind of where I'm at tight end. And that's why I've labeled quite often, 5 tight ends and, flip a coin 1 week and flip a coin the next week. So I hear you out there.
Flipping over to the defensive side, safety Nick Cross or Rodney Thomas II?
Cross. I don't even know if Thomas is the backup. I think I did a depth chart earlier this offseason, and I want to say I put Ronnie Harrison Jr. as more of the backup.
Wow.
Now, we'll see how camp plays out, but So Ronnie Harrison Jr. starts what? It was that Cincinnati game he started at linebacker late last season. And 3 weeks later, he's starting safety against the Raiders. Once Blackman went. They passed up Ronnie Thomas to start Ronnie Harrison Jr. So, clearly there were some issues there with consistency and, all of that. So, yeah, I would say to the Cross or Thomas answer, it would be a lot of Cross. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kwity Paye or Latu at defensive end?
Yeah, that's a good one. I probably Paye just in outright snaps, but again, I still think Latu's going to play some very, very important snaps. So I would think Paye. It's not good for Kwity Paye if Latu outsnaps him.
You don't think it'll be a situation where it could be potential even?
Well, I just think Paye will be more first and second down, and Latu will be more of third down. And again, sometimes you don't get those third down reps. If they obviously convert on first or second down, you don't fall into the third down necessarily. And sure, there'll be drives where Latu will have his opportunity, but I think they can be so run-centric focused on those early downs with Gus Bradley. I think Paye would outsnap. Latu would have to show a lot as a run defender, I think, for that to happen.
When you're watching training camp and you're watching the defensive end, where Latu lines up primarily, does that tell you the future of either Kwity or Ebukam?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I'm going to read that much into it right now. Obviously both have one more year left on their deals, Ebukam and Paye. So I don't know if I'm there. I am curious, in Latu's case, how much versatility does he show? He showed that a lot at UCLA. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was one of the things that really stood out to me in kind of evaluating him. But, probably not as much this year to answer that question. But just in, for the most part, Paye's been kind of a one-side guy in his career.
Yep.
So if Latu can show more of that, then certainly that makes him more attractive to the team moving forward.
Yeah, that's why I said that, because Paye primarily right side and Ebukam primarily left side.
Sure.
Final position group, cornerback Dallas Flowers or Jalen Jones?
I'm really looking forward to seeing more Flowers in camp. Jones exits the spring for me with the lead, but the fact that Flowers was participating, was wild. And think about that. Braden Smith had kind of off-on knee issues, doesn't participate the whole spring. Dallas Flowers tears his Achilles in October and participates in the spring.
Yeah.
So, what does another month and a half removed from that do for him? So that is that's a battle that, again, I'm curious about. And, should Juju Brents be the outright leader of that kind of 3-for-2 group? Kenny Moore is a definite. You go into your nickel, you play two other corners. Kenny Moore slides inside, so two outsides. Juju, Jalen Jones, Dallas Flowers. I think it's that order entering camp. Should Juju be the overwhelming favorite?
I don't think so.
Did he earn that as a rookie?
I don't think so.
I tend to agree with you. But I think depth chart-wise right now, I feel relatively confident in saying it's Juju, then it's Jalen, then it's Dallas. Again, how does that play out over 3 weeks at Grand Park? So, Flowers I want to see more of.
There may not be a big drop-off from 1 to 3 in this situation just because of what we discussed right there, that we don't feel like Juju's earned the right, you know.
Which, you can look at that as a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah,
and
no
so,
kidding.
Obviously, Juju hasn't had, to go back to your Will Mallory point, he hasn't had much of an offseason at all. So, that'll be something to watch.
Gary's up next. He wants to know why he is the only one that feels like the Colts were fine at wide receiver with Anthony Richardson versus adding a safety.
Well, fine. I don't really use the word fine and sleep too well at night thinking that. I'm not a big that's a ringing endorsement. Woohoo! It's a fine group. I get where Gary's coming from. I would ask this. Are you fine with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, or are you fine with Shane Steichen running the offense?
Probably the latter.
I think that's where the difference for me at safety is okay, how does safety get helped? It gets helped by a good pass rush and Gus Bradley.
Yep.
How does the wide receiver position get helped? It gets helped by Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. So it's what do you feel more comfortable in? The Richardson-Steichen dynamic or the Bradley pass rush dynamic? It probably is Steichen. Certainly more from a coaching standpoint there. So, I would just add this on A.D. Mitchell. Again, I have shared my thoughts on how he looked in the spring. rookie numbers are so hard to come by. I think you brought those up on last week's pod. I mean, you talk about some of the great wideouts this franchise has had, and they've had great ones. Rookie numbers are no slam dunk. So
they've only had one go over 900 receiving yards, and that was Bill Brooks.
So again, you're talking, the T.Y.s and the Reggies, and I know Reggie's a little banged up, but even the Marvins of the world. So I think just something to make sure that we don't lose sight of there.
Sean is up next. Sean says, "Hey, Kevin, just listening to the latest pod on my walk. I'm shouting to myself how big Quentin Nelson doesn't even get a mention for most indispensable. Is this an acceptance that he should not have been rewarded with a large contract? Also, good job with the pod rebrand. Looks good."
I appreciate that, Sean. Thank you to Eddie. Thank you to our digital team for helping out on that. And shout out to Nick Cotton Jim as well. Yeah, it's a fair point that you bring up Nelson. I would probably tend...
Sean.
Oh, sorry. No, didn't he say Nelson?
Yeah, I thought you were saying, great point you bring up Nelson.
Oh, I thought he meant... I easily could have said that. Fair point on Nelson is what I meant. Sean, thank you for the question. I just think guard's one of the least important positions in the whole field. I've done this exercise before. Maybe Colts diehards can do it, but name the starting guards on the Colts Super Bowl team.
Is it Ryan Deem?
Yeah, well, I think he was a tackle. I believe Ryan Lilja and Jake Scott. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. It's just
Jake Scott sounds like a guy you grew up with in middle school.
Shout out to the Pride of Idaho, Jake Scott. It just. Yeah, I did this exercise a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw the ESPN article. I guess it would have been maybe even earlier this week. You see that ESPN article, anonymous scout exact labeled Quentin Nelson is overrated.
Yeah.
And when you look at the finances at guard, Nelson's cap hit for this season, I want to say, is $25 million. I think it's the second highest of any guard in the league. And if you go down to 6th or 7th on that list, that cap hit's 10 or 11 million or 12. I don't know the exact number, but it's under half of it. Do you feel like you feel that amount of money and the difference of a left guard? Do you feel like you feel $12 to $13 million worth of return on investment if you didn't have the second highest paid cap hit at left guard versus the 4th or the 5th or the 6th or the 7th? At quarterback, if you do that for Mahomes or, who's the 6th best quarterback in the league? What, insert some random Jalen Hurts. I don't even know who you would label as that. Jordan Love. Do you feel that? You do, because quarterback is that important. I would argue even, at wideout or pass rusher, you would feel that. I just don't think that you do at guard. So that's part of why the indispensable nature. To be fair to Nelson, we haven't seen him miss a whole lot of time in his NFL career, so it's hard to truly know. But I don't think you would feel that drop off as immensely as others. And they still have some guards that have at least played, whether it's Josh Sills or Danny Pinter. They still have, Wesley French if you want to go to interior options. So, to your question, Sean, it's probably been my biggest disagreement in the Ballard era. I don't think he puts positional value in as much of a focus as he should. I don't think you draft guards 6 overall. I don't. Because contractually, their rookie wage scale is here. And to me, guards and their impact snap in and snap out for 17 games and over the course of a career are not at that level. And that is not, Nelson has been a great pro. He's a Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. Great pro. But again, feeling that impact there, I don't think you do.
Yeah, that's why he missed out on my list. I was thinking about it when we were talking about backup offensive lineman.
I briefly thought about him. And just part of that is the position there. And I don't know, maybe I should pay more attention to, interior value and, how it's viewed from quarterbacks and stepping up in the pocket, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
Certainly a fascinating discussion. Next Twitter question comes from Josh. Colts were 28th in points allowed on defense, but were middle of the pack statistically in red zone defense. This means we lost most of our games on big plays, which checks out. Have we done enough on defense to limit the big plays? If we're not tackling well in the secondary, not sure an improved pass rush with Latu and a full year of Grover is going to be enough to elevate us to being a mid-level defense, which I feel like should be a reasonable goal.
Well, I'd agree on a lot of what Josh just laid out there. I think it's a great question. I don't know how to quantify it. Well, I guess we could look at some deeper analytics to quantify this season, Eddie, but my biggest goal for the defense is this. Can you disrupt quicker? Can you disrupt the opposing passing game quicker than you have? Mm-hmm. I don't think they've done that as consistently enough to play deep into the month of January. And that, to me, is my biggest goal for this defense. Can you get that quarterback off his spot quicker? Can you make C.J. Stroud hit now option 2, 3? It's not the Nico Collins deep ball in the first play of the game. And that play...
Heck, option 2, Stephon Diggs, possibly.
Well, but what I'm getting at is option 2 on that deep ball to Nico Collins was what? A check down to Singletary, and you survive at 2nd and 7.
Yeah.
You go back and you watch that play, and Buckner is, it's a split second. And it's a fine line, but that's what separates the elite defenses from, how did Josh describe it, a mid-level defense? Mm-hmm. That to me is what has to show up more for this team. Can you disrupt quicker? Jeff Saturday, I remember, said this when we had him on as a radio guest prior to his interim coaching career, of like, at the end of the day, what the offense is trying to achieve is we want our timing to be on. If our timing is on, we're successful.
Oh, yeah.
It's the defense's job to disrupt it. And now you can disrupt it in flashy ways, a sack, an interception, a fumble, all those things. But you can disrupt it with a little press. And now Nico Collins is not hitting that spot at the top of his route as quickly as he thought. Oh, wow. You have dismantled the left guard, Kenyon Green, for the Texans. And now C.J. Stroud has got to roll to his right a little bit, and he can't make that 45, 50-yard ball in the air like you can. Disrupt quicker. That's my biggest defensive goal for the Colts.
Biggest one. Not turnovers?
No. I mean, turnovers come off of that.
That's true.
Yes, Eddie.
More splashy plays.
Right. I mean, let's just hit a few more singles and doubles. And sure, the home runs will come off of that in that, yes, you're going to, if you disrupt quicker, that stuff will happen. But if you can do that, you're going to limit what Josh says here. He, all about limiting explosive plays. And again, if you disrupt in the red zone, that can be huge as well. I think it's harder to do that. Oh, some might say it's easier to do it because the field's a little bit more confined. The plays are a little bit more quicker rhythm in the red zone. So I think it's harder to do that. But disrupt quicker. Biggest goal.
But can and will Gus Bradley make those changes to press at the line of scrimmage?
Well, and my answer to that would be no. And that's obviously a question that I think should be, fairly asked.
2 Twitter questions left. Jason and Cato. We will start with Jason. Extreme hypothetical projection. If you were to project the maximum realistic upside for each Colts player, what would your team achievement ceiling look like? Candidates would include...
Oh, boy, my mind is blown hearing this here. Okay, all right.
Candidates will include Anthony Richardson, Alec Pierce, Jonathan Taylor, Leatu Latu, Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs, and young corners, assuming some decent help at defensive back is signed.
Yeah. I guess my answer to that would be give me the positions that truly matter.
Quarterback, wide receiver.
So he labels, Richardson or Latu or, I guess some of these wideouts. Mitchell, they all would increase your ceiling significantly.
Yeah.
More than did he label Taylor?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to discredit Taylor. Young corners obviously would fall into that first category for me. So I would say my easy answer is just positional value. Now, again, if Richardson reaches his ceiling, you have a legit chance to play deep into January.
Oh, yeah.
Deep. And let me stress that. Now, I want to make sure that, and I've said this now for the last year plus, and I think last year played into it. I think this year we're going to see it. I've never seen the AFC like this.
Me either.
And I don't know if we've done this exercise on the show, but Eddie, if you're a fan of the Patriots, if you're a fan of the Titans, if you're a fan of the Raiders, and you're a fan of the Broncos, we hook up a lie detector to you, and you say your team has missed the playoffs, you can't be mad. Those all would check out on the lie detector. The other 12 teams in the AFC, they should and would be pissed if their team didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So now we're talking Dolphins, Bills, Jets. We're talking every team in the AFC North. Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. We're talking 3 of the 4 in the AFC South. Colts, Jags, and Texans. And we're talking Chargers and Chiefs. They all would and should be pissed. They all so play that out. That means 7 teams make the playoffs, which again, 7 of 16 is a very healthy number. Mm-hmm. But that means 7 make it and 5 don't that feel like they sit here on July 16th and feel like they should.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've said that in a lot of off seasons about the AFC. Now, again, there's been years where it's more top heavy. There's more Kansas City type teams. And this year, I ran into a Buffalo fan a few weeks ago. We were chatting I don't even know who you label as if I said right now, Kansas City's the best, who's the second best team in the AFC?
Ooh. Good question.
And maybe it's kind of like the Eastern Conference.
I still think it's Buffalo.
And the NBA. So again, you would say Buffalo. I would think you get some answers. I would say Baltimore. I think you might even get someone that would say Houston. I think you would say oh, Cincinnati's going to have a bounce back year. Or, get more home games for the Dolphins and their first start, their first 2 months of the year is going to continue. So, again, it might lack the, Super Bowl odds might indicate this. It might lack the 3 teams on tier 1, but I just think tier 2 and 3 is so much more deep than it has been in years past.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Final Twitter question. This is a fun one from Cato. It's summertime, so it's this time of the year for these kinds of questions. Who is your Indianapolis Colts Mount Rushmore? Is it all offense? Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, and Marvin Harrison? Does Bob Sanders or Dwight Freeney make your cut?
Ooh, this is good. This is kind of getting into our, little Ring of Honor versus Colts Hall of Fame sort of thought debate on this. Okay, Peyton and Marvin are locks, right?
Are they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess, he's saying Indianapolis Colts Mount Rushmore. I mean, some would say, what about Dickerson? I let's just stick to the Manning era. It's probably the one that I know the best. Peyton, Marv are locks. I think you got to go Freeney next.
You think so?
I think so. So Peyton, Marvin, and Freeney. And boy, that last one to me is a coin flip. I'm going to cop out. I could really make a case for all of them. I mean, I think you could make a case for Bob. You could certainly make a case for Edgerrin. I mean, Reggie's longevity and his playoff resume was great. I mean, again, Mathis, I've always been that the old strip sacks and the fumbles, just huge. Peyton, Marv, Freeney. Eddie Garrison, I don't know. What would be yours? I'm going to cop out.
Dallas Clark?
Ooh, you going off the board? Do you mean that, or are you just trying to be contrarian?
No, I mean that. When you see how that offense changed when they drafted him.
I'll go
one of the greatest tight ends ever.
I'll go Bob Sanders. I just think with Adam, you don't win that Super Bowl.
I'd agree with you there. I don't know. That fourth one's tough.
The fourth one is really tough. But I feel pretty good about the 3. All right, Eddie Garrison, that wraps it up. Thank you, sir.
Yes, final podcast week without Colts football.
And again, you and I haven't discussed this. Let me double check this now that as I look at the calendar. Should we shoot for a Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's try for that, okay?
After they report?
Yeah. Let's try for that. We'll do that here coming up. That's the plan. Head into training camp again. Bear with us. Training camp coverage will be as normal, though. Written content every day, video recaps from practice, the whole 9. Yeah.
Will they get to see your new hair?
Yeah. I don't know. I probably will wear some hats out there, but yeah.
You got the full head of lettuce now.
Maybe there'll be some days. I'll let the locks just flow in the wind.
Yeah.
Let the Grand Park wind. We're exposed back there without a whole lot of trees behind us, so. We will be up there at Grant Park.
This is the longest I think I've ever seen your hair, by the way. You getting a haircut before next Wednesday? Yeah.
I feel like I just got one. Gosh. Now you're making me.
Ever since you got that treatment from Weird Go Hair Indy, that hair is just flowing.
It's as long as Matt Gay field goal attempts. That's what it is there. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen. We're wrapping up. Thank you, everybody. Check out our website, 1075thefan.com. Off-season coverage continues.